Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Project Impact, issue number 1 and 2. They're on Comixology, and it is a creator-controlled comic book. This is the definition of true indie, ADR Comics, owned by the writer. I'm going to give you the rundown of the people who made this book right now. This issue is called The Power Outage. Alan Russett is the writer. Stephen Peterson is the artist. Gary Scott Beatty does the colors and the letters. And Project Impact, like I said, was created by Alan Russett. Issue number 2, however, also Russett and Peterson on art. The colors are now done by Linda Scott Campbell, and the letters and pre-press is done by Richard Lumsden. Okay, very interesting. Well, that's funny. I just knocked that all over. Very interesting. My sound guarding over there. Very interesting way of doing this comic book. Alan decided to jump right into the mix with this book. There is here a very basic plot. Here's a public utility, the hydroelectric power plant down in Niagara Falls that's supposed to supply a lot of energy to, good portion of Ontario. And they actually show a scene from Center Island, a view of the, like the CN Tower and, the most famous look of Canada from Center Island down in Toronto, which is cool. I dug on that. Like I've seen that view myself from up here, north of the border. This is a Canadian superhero team and seemingly a Canadian supervillain team. Good origin story here for the villains in that, oh yeah, with all the heroes down, south of the border, well, at least in America, it figures that a lot of the villains would decide to come north of the border because, hey, no real superheroes up there, right? Well, there have been. They've just been under wraps. How come we've never heard of these villains or these heroes before? That's actually the one of my favorite parts of this comic book, because the main character comes up and the police are having problems here. Like, oh my God, what do we do? They're supervillains, and the guy shows up. He shows his card, Project Impact, and at the bottom in the it's like a thought bubble, but it's a narration box with the main character's thoughts. He's like, yeah, I've never heard of you either. Perfect way to say what you got to say and move on. All of your questions are answered at that point on in a very great way. Anyhow, this cat, he's got his own superhero team. Now, there's a lot of people in this book, a whole lot. And I'm talking essentially main characters, all right? We don't start off with an individual character book. No, we start off with a team book. And we don't go up against like one big bad threat. No, this is a team threat. So there's a lot of characters shown here. And this is essentially a double-sized first issue. Lot happens in here. Whole lot of characters, whole lot of names. Listen, I can't remember anybody's name offhand in this. Actually, I can. Okay, never mind. I can't remember a whole lot. I can't remember everybody's name in this book because way too many characters. That's fine, though. The characters are drawn to be very different from each other, very different looking, and their power sets are also very different also. This isn't like a squad book, This isn't like, oh, it's Ultimatum or Hydra or AIM. They all look the same. No, they're all very different power sets and everything, and you can clearly recognize the characters that way. You go back and read through a second time, you'll be able to start getting a bunch of the names of these characters, including the villains in this team. So anyway, again, very interesting way of doing this. You got, like, let's say the big guy in here, and you got a big gigantic character. What's your way of actually differentiating this character from everybody else except that he can punch people, and they go flying? Well, something happens, like the way that they take out the big guy in this, and I'm talking about the hero big guy, the way that he gets taken out is interesting, and I'm hoping that Alan goes with this, the idea that he's going to have some permanent effects, like long lasting, that's going to affect this character. Like it could be a PTSD. It could be that he winds up becoming a villain at this point. Who knows? Just do something completely different with the character, because that, like, the big characters are always the ones that are usually fun to look at but don't have a whole lot going for them, right? You could do a whole lot more with a big character if you simply give him some backstory. And especially if we've seen the real origin. How did he get his superpowers? Who cares? He's a big guy. Could be a gamma bomb. Who cares? It's the internal dialogue that this character has. It's the internal workings, that lead to this character being somebody worth looking at. He's the most boring character in the book right now. He could wind up turning out to be the coolest character to follow in the book. and that would be interesting. But there are a bunch of other characters in here, and you can separate them from their power set and the way that they look in the beginning, and that essentially is good enough for me. But this is a team book, and that's a brave as hell thing to do. I'm going to break into that in a hot moment. Issue number 2 of this book continues the story. Now, here's where I'm going to talk about the one thing that I would like to complain about, where issue 2 just straight up says, yeah, it's a moot point. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. The art. Stephen Peterson. Never heard of the guy before, and that's the way that a true indie comic book is supposed to be. I'm not talking about, Image Comics and Dynamite saying, oh, look, we are not Marvel or DC. Okay, can I just start writing a book for you? No, you got to vet yourself. Well, then I don't consider you a true indie comic book. This creator-owned book, yes, this is true indie. These are the guys who need the hand up. You know what I'm saying? They don't want the hand out. They want the hand up. They want some kind of recognition. They want a little bit of a press. Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that, especially with books like this. When I looked at the art of this book, it looked like a modern-day 80s comic book. How is that a bad thing? Because the 80s books still had the 4-dot matrix color scheme that they were working with. This doesn't, yet it still looks kind of like that. So the art does look very sloppy in the first issue. Faces still look good, a bunch of things look good, but every so often you come across something like, this is a really bad panel. It's like you were stretching it with the rest of the book, but this panel, actually really almost cringeworthy, you know? By the time you get to that second issue, gone. Peterson gets this new, I don't know what it is, like confidence. Maybe he had more time to devote to it. Maybe he just started believing in the book more. But for real, like you get to the second, I'm going to give you a little tiny bit of a spoiler. There's a dragon in the second issue, and I'm looking at this dragon like, damn. I went back and I looked, like, is this the same person drawing the same book? Drawing this book as the first issue. I went so far as, I'm not even joking on this, like the difference between night and day, people talk about that all the time. No, I went back and I looked at the individual letters. I looked at the spelling of this dude's name to see, did Alan Russell sneak in like, Steven Peterson? Peter Stevens' son instead of Peterson. Like, dude, what is going on? Because this is not the same guy. No, it's the same guy. I don't know what happened. I would love to know what happened. But this cat came out of the box and said, yeah, this is going to be a much better book. And it is. Like, the story is almost, dying here. The story is almost secondary compared to how different the art is in the first book and the second book. The first book, you're looking at like, it's an indie book, I can let it go. Second book, you get to it, oh shoot, this guy's going places. Yeah, so fantastic team on this book. Geez, hope I don't die making this video. Anyway, so here's one of the things that I look at this book and I say that it's extremely brave, because you've got a Canadian superhero team. For the most part, who's going to care, right? Who's going to care? Because while Canada may be bigger territory-wise, there's not nearly as many people in Canada as there are in the States. And most of your comic book readers are going to be in the States. What's up to everybody outside of the States? Hey, saying overseas and all that good stuff. But nonetheless, most of your readers are going to be in America. So what's going to be so special about your book, right? Excuse me, it's the story that brings you in, because the plot is very basic. It's like, public service place is taken over. Alpha Flight was extremely successful, and it's not just because they had Marvel behind them, but a lot of it's because they had Marvel behind them. What else? They had Jim Byrne and Chris Claremont behind them. What else? Alpha Flight didn't start with issue number 1. Y'all know that, right? It started with the pages of the X-Men, where Alpha Flight was first introduced. So there was already a huge stepping stone for bringing these guys in. What's more than that, inside the pages of the X-Men was the most popular character at the time. Like, to the point where this guy could have started out selling Spider-Man at some point. We're talking about Wolverine. It was, in Marvel Comics, it was always Spider-Man and then The Thing, Ben Grimm. They were the two top characters. And Wolverine came in and straight up to this day even has unseated Ben Grimm as, being more popular, as being the number 2 character at Marvel. No doubt. So, yeah, they, Alpha Flight had a whole lot of boost behind it. On top of that, they had this team book where the fight in Alpha Flight, issue number 1 was, look, I'm not disparaging Alpha Flight. I love Alpha Flight. I have most of their comic books. You know what I'm saying? I used to have all their comic books. So I literally had to recollect my Alpha Flight comic books after I lost them, back in 2011. But they literally had, like, who was the first off, they didn't even have everybody in the team in the first issue. Like, Puck, where was Puck? Where was Box? You know what I'm saying? What's going on? They slowly introduced characters into Alpha Flight. But more than that, what do you call it? Who was the bad guy in issue number 1? It was this dude. It was this big monster, one of the great beasts. Like, wow, you really put a lot of thought into that. Oh, sure, later on, they were able to do a whole lot with that. Even in issue number 2, they came on and all of a sudden, like, the Master of the World didn't show up until issue 5, but issue 2, that's where you felt the first taste of him because of what happened to Marina. So, like, what's going on here, right? They didn't do a whole lot in the first issues to really drag you in. No, they had all sorts of help from the X-Men comic books and everything. This has nothing to base itself upon. Nothing except the story and the art and everything that they're throwing at you. So you've got a team book that you've never heard of this team before. No preamble in another, best-selling comic book. The enemy they're fighting is not just some big glob, blah, can't even talk or anything like that. And you'll develop that story later. No, it's another actual team. And they have a counterattack for the main heroes in here. Okay, this was... I don't know if Alan Russett realized that or not, but that was a very... It's a very brave thing to do. Let's just be realistic. Almost haughty. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, are you seriously going to come up and throw up an entire superhero and supervillain team in your first issue? Okay. But it worked. It generally worked because it made me want to read issue number 2, and I am looking forward to issue number 3. But those first 2 issues are available up on Comixology right now. And you can pick them up and read them and enjoy yourself and see exactly what I'm talking about. Support your local guys. Support your indie guys. You know what I'm saying? Even if you're in the States, support your indie guys because, yeah. Anyway, guys, this was a fantastic book. And yes, as typical, no, Alan Russett, the creator of ADR Comic Books, did not send me anything, no money, anything, except for the first 2 issues of this comic book. You know what I'm saying? And doesn't even have an actual physical copy in order to send me. Otherwise, he would. Plus, he's in Canada, so it would have been a whole lot cheaper, the shipping, as opposed to the guys like in America or overseas sending me their comic books because they actually have a physical copy. No. In this case, dude just shows up and he's like, this is what I've got. Can you review it? Yes, I will happily review it. And I'm happy that I did read it because this was a genuinely fun book and I'm looking forward to what happens next. Comixology, guys, go check it out. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.